I just tell the truth, and telling the truth is crazy in a world full of lies.
Hello guys, welcome to Modern at the Mill Press. So our last episode, we discussed dating and independence, and you guys were upset. You guys were so mad at me because you guys said, Ariel, it sounds like you have something against women pursuing higher education. To which I have to say, no, I love when anyone pursues education. If anything, the Bible says, my people perish because of lack of knowledge, because of lack of understanding. My problem is the reason why we are pursuing this higher education. So I broke down some of the statistics of what is happening in our world today. And I said that 76% of marriages are initiated by women. Of those 76%, 92% of those women actually are high educated, bachelor's degree owning type of women, which means, and it has also been found, that there is a high correlation between your desire to divorce and a higher education. After that, we also went into the PEW Institute of Research, and we said how men nowadays are 3 times more likely to not want to get married. Why? Why don't we men want to get married? Right? And then on top of that, we started also seeing that 80% of unmarried women, they prioritize money more than their actual values, desires, and feelings. Their priority is, are you making more money than I am? So when I broke down some of these things in a biblical perspective of what God says about independent women, your response, my people, was, Ariel, you have a problem with women pursuing higher education, to which I had to say and make this podcast, which I title Modern Feminism and Marriage. So if you guys have been following, you know I'm very big on not sharing my opinion, but sharing the facts of what we see throughout the Bible and throughout history. So I figure I'll give you guys a little bit of history, a little time capsule of what happened. Where does the feminist movement start? Where did the idea originate? Now, I'm not going to get you guys straight into the Bible because honestly, this is modern. Let's talk about 1840s with a guy named John Stuart Mill. Now, John had a very lucrative idea. He said women are enslaved to have duties because of their lack of education. So because they don't have the education, they are forced to be stay-home wives. They're forced to be stay-home mothers because they have not been given the freedom to pursue a higher education. This is in the 1840s. Now, this idea grew, but you got to remember, we were a little bit old school back in the day, right? Very conservative, very tied to the family values that we find in the Bible. Well, let's move forward to 1914. What was happening in the United States? The Great War, the World War I, right? And this is the thing you got to understand. The total population in the United States in 1910, 4 years before the Great War, the total population was 92,228,000, right? I understand that because then in the Great War, in World War I, there was a total death amount of 40 million, specifically men. Why specifically men? Because women were not drafted into the war. Keep that in mind because, again, if the population is 92 million and 40 million Americans have just lost their life, who is the primary dominant gender in the United States after the fact? You have the young kids and you have the moms. Why is that important? Because just a few years, 2 years after the war ends, then we have introduced and signed the 19th Amendment, giving women's rights to vote. Why is that important? Because I want you to understand that everything that has happened leading up to this point has been carefully played out in such a way that it seems like you can easily miss what's going on. Men had put a specific rule, a specific authority, a specific way of thinking and living that they enforce. But the men died off, and now women now get the right to vote, and now they also start implementing their ideas onto what should be done in regards to the laws of the country and so forth. Throughout that time, of course, we had more war, we had the Great Depression, but let me take it back now to 1940s. Because in the 1940s, you have a woman named Simone de Beauvoir, right? She's a French woman, but she says something that completely changed the ideology of womanhood of that time. She said, a female is a woman insofar she feels herself as such. Basically, she goes on to say that you become a woman as you age, specifically and primarily because of the stimulation of the clitoris. What she's saying is, womanhood is all about feeling and pleasure. Now, that was huge because back in those days, you got to remember, very conservative, everything about womanhood had to be with family. And now she's bringing a radical idea that she's saying, no, womanhood is about your growing up and enjoying pleasure and also feeling yourself, understanding yourself, basically internalizing that nurturing aspect instead of your kids onto yourself, right? Now, this is important because as you begin to see the feminist movement, Simone has completely been such a big factor into determining what is the proper women ideology. She begins to explain that women have a natural desire to want to put their kids first. And because of that natural desire, they become slaves to the kids and their husbands. And therefore, because you women have that natural desire, her proposal is we should make it that they are not allowed to be in the home. So that way we can help them and save them from the enslavement that comes from being a wife and a mother. That's her ideology. Like, we're going to help women by removing the very ability to be mothers in the household. Now, again, this is in the 1940s that she's bringing up these ideas throughout time. Then you finally get to the 1970s and you have a woman by the name of Shulamith Firestone. And she said the end goal of feminism, and by the way, she's one of the founding members when it comes to the feminism movement. She says the end goal of feminism is not the elimination of male privilege. What privilege? Remember, the right to vote. How did they lose that privilege? Which they didn't, but how did the women gain it? When men died defending them in the Great War. But nonetheless, the end goal of feminism is not the elimination of male privilege to fight in the war, but of sex distinction itself. She's saying what we need to do is not just separate this so-called privilege, but what we need to do is destroy the very concept of what makes a man and a woman separate different things. This is something we should aim to destroy. The very idea of what makes a woman and what makes a man, which again goes all the way back to this idea. You see what I'm saying? Feeling and pleasure. And now it's like, hey, your pleasure is not deductive to your specific genitals, but in how you feel about it. So we just got to remove that whole ideology altogether. Why do I mention these people? Because the 1970s was by far one of the most catastrophic events and moments and decade in the United States when it comes to marriage. Because 1975 is when you have the Child Support Enforcement Act. And in there, what you see is when you start seeing the beginning of child support, you see that it was implemented in order to reduce public expense or cash assistance by obtaining ongoing support from the non-custodial parent. Basically, the government is stepping away and saying, hey, listen, we don't want to take care of these people. Let's put a charge on the men. And now men have to pay for these charges. Why is that a big deal? Because less than half a decade after that, you have the highest divorce rates in the United States even to this day. You have 59% of all divorces receiving their eligible child support, credit, finances, and money. On top of that, 37% of all those marriages receive a one-time property settlement, their home. Why do I bring this up? Because when you look throughout the history of feminism, it has been a destruction of what family is supposed to be, right? Because feminism has become this thing where you become more aware of how you feel, your pleasure, and your feelings onto yourself more than the nurturing aspect that it is to take care of a kid. And if that is not enough, also it needs to be financed by a man. But do not give any respect to that man. This is your property because you have given your due season and time and expense into that relationship. So now you owe yourself child support, right? And now look, I don't want to go ahead and bash the women that collect child support. That is not what I'm trying to do. But I do want you to understand that there is a government incentivized option that pushes the women to go and get divorced. And there is a correlation between higher education and divorce. So as you see women, you see that there is this natural desire for them to, hey, listen, focus on your feelings, focus on your pleasure. And on top of that, hey, you need to pursue a higher education. Doesn't matter that it takes you away from your kids. Doesn't matter that it takes you away from your family. We need to get you to be empowered, right? So that you can become independent. Now, before I keep going with history, I do want to take a pause there because let me tell you something. If you ever been in a church, women love talking about Proverbs 31 women, right? Because in the Bible, this is book called Proverbs. And in there, you have a specific section that talks about a woman of noble character. And this is in chapter 31 of the book of Proverbs. So this is why a Proverbs 31 woman. Now, when you read through the chapter, you see about this noble woman that she is busy. This woman is up and out and working and doing everything that she can do. I'm going to read you some of the verses, but it says like she selects wool and works with eager hands. Basically, she's out here making trades and finding the right materials, which means she understands the economy, right? It says that she is like a merchant bringing food to her house. So she knows how to get a good deal. She's wise, right? On top of that, it says she gets up early, even when it's still night. So she's not lazy. She's working, right? And it says that she goes and considers a field and buys it. And from the earnings of that field, from the proceeds, from the estate, from the equity of that field, then she goes and buys a vineyard. And you see this woman is busy. She is making it work right and left, making sure she makes everything that can happen. And a lot of women that I meet, they're like, yeah, I'm financially independent. I'm a strong woman. I'm a Proverbs 31 woman because I get things done. I get this done and I have this education. I have this. And it's just like I'm a Proverbs 31 woman. And they can usually miss the first verse before all of this. Because verse 10 of chapter 31 and verse 11, we like this. It says, a wife of noble character who can find. She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. And then it begins to list everything that she does. And I made this point that the Proverbs 31 woman, she is bringing all this wealth, all these finances, primarily from what she received from her husband, and then she makes it grow. That you see that she is in the welfare, not of herself, but in for her husband. That she brings him good, that he has complete confidence in her. This is not a woman that's about herself. This is a woman that says, I devote my wisdom, my knowledge, my understanding, my education to prosper what my husband has given me. That's Proverbs 31. But when you look through the history of the United States, you see a complete opposite of that. You see that the what has been incentivized is get yours, get your money, get your education. And if it doesn't work out, if you don't feel right, if you don't have enough pleasure from this, take it and go, because you can do without it. And let me tell you something. I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about the story of the prodigal son, because Luke 15 talks about this son who goes up to his father and says to the father, hey, listen, I know you haven't died yet, but can I have my inheritance now? Which is disrespectful. He's saying, yo, I don't care about having a relationship with you. I don't care about being in the same house as you. I don't care about sharing the things and the values that you have. I just want my money, my share of your inheritance, so I can enjoy myself. And he takes the money and leaves. And man, when I see that, that's what I see in today's feminism and marriage movement, is that you see such a selfish, I don't care about the value that you bring. I don't care where this money came from. I don't care where this house came from. I don't care how much you had to work for this. My pleasure and my feeling is bigger than your value and your provision. Give me mines so I can go ahead and enjoy myself. And we see such a broken idea of marriage, because now it becomes this selfish ambition of growth and self-worth and me, and I have to get mines, and I'm beautiful so I deserve it, and I'm worth it, so therefore I'll go ahead and attain it. And you look at who I am, look at how I look like, I need it. And you know who else thought like that? Satan. Satan looked at himself. He said, I deserve better. I deserve more. I deserve more than what God has given me. You know what? I deserve more than God himself. I tell people this in marriage counseling. I tell them the most toxic thing you can have in a marriage is the idea of I deserve. That is the most anti-biblical, antagonistic idea you can put in a marriage. It's poison. Because when you say, I deserve more than what you have, what you're saying is, what I have is not enough. It's not good enough. What God has given me is not good enough. What God has called me to is not good enough. The husband I have is not good enough. The moment I have, this is not enough for me. And then you break a covenant for the sake of your feelings and your desires. And the worst part is you are incentivized to do it. Because now you have an education that says you'll be good, you'll be all right, you can take care of yourself. And by the way, because you invested so much into that marriage, you get to take your inheritance. You get to take what's yours. And you get to break what God made one in the first place. You know what I found scary throughout this whole study? That since the 1970s till now, the number of women being educated has been higher than men's every year, more and more. In the 1970s, it was about 32%. Now we all the way up to like 65%, which basically means women are becoming more and more educated, while at the same time you see less and less marriages taking place, while at the same time you see more children being born outside of marriages, being born in single mother households, and then you see women who are tired. Man, I keep telling people, I have worked a number of different jobs with a number of different women, and every single woman that I've met works out of necessity and not out of desire. And that's a big deal, because the feminist movement, at least I'm not even going to say the feminist movement, the role of a man is to protect and provide for his wife. And even then, I will take a step further. I will say is to go ahead and protect the women of the world. So if I, as a man and as a provider, I see that these women have not been taken care of, and because they have not been taken care of, they have to go ahead and engage the man's world of labor. And in that, they have to go ahead and accept male dominant traits, which makes them less likely to find a partner that will actually be willing to put up with those dominating traits of a man, because no man wants to be with another man. They end up alone, divorce. And then the sad thing is that as they end up alone, you see that 80% of them, after that divorce, after that separation, the only thing that can incentivize them once again, 80% of them is money. And it's just, we have gone from a place where now the woman that has a nurturing aspect embedded in her from God has been taught to believe education is a replacement, that success financially is a replacement, that love for your business is the same as love for your kids, that love for your dog is the same as love from your kid. Let me tell you, it's a lie. It's a lie because the thing is, at the end of the day, as you get older, you start embracing the fact that you don't want to be there, that you shouldn't have to be working, that the truth of the matter is, it is hard to provide because honestly, frankly, it is not supposed to be your job. Your job is to be cared for, just like Jesus cared for his church. Like, we are supposed to, like, marriage itself is supposed to paint a picture of how Jesus provides for his church. And his church is cleansed by Jesus through his word. This is why when you read in the New Testament, it says the very nature of marriage, the ministry of marriage, is for the husband to teach his wife, how to be more godly according to the image of Christ. And in doing so, it's as if he's washing her so that she can become more like this perfect church that the husband can present and say, listen, look, Jesus, this is what I did with the woman you gave her. I bathed her, I clothed her, I covered her, I washed her, I poured into her, I loved her, I taught her, I made sure that she was everything that you taught me. That's marriage. Feminism says you don't need a man to teach you, you go teach. You don't need a man to provide, you provide for yourself. You don't need to nurture your kids, you need to nurture your business. You don't, and it basically takes all the natural traits that make you a beautiful creation of God as a woman and says, internalize it onto yourself. Be selfish. Be about you. So again, just to the questions and the statements some of you made, it's not that I'm against women pursuing higher education. I'm not. Like, when you go through the Bible, what I am against is the reason. Because the whole Bible is always, God looks at your heart. He looks at your intention. And when I see women pursuing a higher education, they do it primarily out of fear that should they ever rely on a man, it may not work out. And they embrace a relationship on fear. And let me tell you, when you look through 1 John chapter 4, verse 18, it says that there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. The problem is that we are leading a generation based on fear. We are leading into marriage with a fear that, yeah, I'm going to be with you and I love you, but just in case, I'm going to get my education as a backup plan. Hey, yeah, I'm here 100%, but if anything shouldn't work out, I know a good divorce lawyer that will get me my money, so I'm set. This is how we enter in marriage. Already 1 foot in and 1 foot out in case it doesn't work, because being a woman, it's all about feeling and pleasure. The sad part is that the Child Support Enforcement Act, it did incentivize women to want to get divorced. And then in the 1980s, you had the highest divorce rates this country has ever seen. And it's those parents that raised the next generation. And the next generation were raised by a group of single women that have been ingrained into an ideology that has grown over time to basically say, don't rely on women, on men. You must get it yourself. You must rely. You should always have a backup plan. And you see a generation of fear carried from one generation to the next. And you see single women teaching their daughters how to stay and be single women. A single woman cannot give advice on how to be a wife. Understand that. It's very different. It's like you don't go to a football player to teach you how to be a basketball player. Stay in your lane. If your parent is not married, they are not fit to show you the proper ropes on how to have a marriage. The beauty of the gospel is this, that even when your mother or your father forsake you, God says, I will never leave you. And he shows you the proper idea of marriage by giving you his son. And now, because you have been washed by the blood of Christ, he says, I have made you my church, which, by the way, is considered the bride of Christ. And he's saying, I'm coming back for my church, right? For a wedding banquet. That he's saying, I'm going to show you what it's like to be a husband. That's the gospel. He says, I'm going to send the Holy Spirit, and he's going to teach you all things. He's going to remind you of things. He's going to convict you because of sin. And I'm going to make sure that as he begins to do this work, he makes you ready for when I come. And you see that God, when he saw that we could not get the picture of marriage right, he sent his son to put us back in our way. And he says, I'm going to make a new covenant. Yeah, you broke the first one. Yeah, you divorced God and you divorced him and you divorced. I get it. But I'm going to make a new covenant. And in this new covenant, I'm going to be the one that holds it together. My blood is going to be the one that holds it together. My spirit is going to be the one that holds it together. And God begins to now set a different generation of what marriage is supposed to be. How beautiful is that? That even in a world of chaos and disorder, where even the government wants to go ahead and incentivize division, God is making marriages flourish. God can intervene in your marriage and make it flourish. God can make your wife be a Proverbs 31, and he can make you be a provider. This is the idea of marriage in the Bible, that you love your wife even unto death. This is the idea of marriage in the Bible, that you serve and submit to your husband as the church submits to Christ. Like, it's this amazing picture that shows the eternal work of the church and God. And you get to be a part of that, not because of your finances, success, or pleasure, but because you are completely in awe to be able to partake of God's beautiful marriage. So I will say this, my biggest thing against feminism is that it promises strength and takes away the strength of women, making them work. It promises them success and provision and enslaves them to a life of necessity and solitude, right? Feminism has never been about making women stronger. It has been always about destroying the concept of family within society. This is why there's this woman in the 1990s named Judith Butler. And she said, and it's taught even in schools today, that gender is a social construct, the very basis for transgenderism. That, hey, this social construct, this is all in your head. Whereas when you look through the Bible, this social construct was instituted by the creator of heaven and earth, where he said, hey man, this is woman, and the two shall be one flesh. That is the Bible. But you know the thing is, when you look through the history of all those names that I mentioned, you will see something so dark in their history, in their past, in their religious beliefs, and you see that there has been an attack onto the people of the United States from these social movements that promise a good life. Just like Satan promised Jesus a good kingdom, promised him all the kingdoms of the earth, if only you serve me, he says. Man, when I tell you, when you look into how beautiful marriage is in the Bible, I promise you, you will hold the marriage at such a high ground that you will understand why feminism is by far one of the biggest poisons that have taken hold of the people here in the United States. So, I want you to understand something. I am all pro women being protected. I am all pro women being educated. I am pro women being empowered, even by the Holy Spirit. What I am against is you using these things that have been given to you to operate out of fear. to operate out of shame, to operate out of hurt of what happened or happened to your parents, let God heal you first so you can see the picture of God in marriage. So I hope you guys enjoy our second episode of Modern. It has been so talked about from you guys. I know you guys have wanted this for some time. I pray that you guys seek in the Bible what does it say about marriage, and that you guys are encouraged by everything God has promised you guys. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, on Thursday, you do have the final chapter of Esther, chapter 10. And then we're done with that book, and I have something important to tell you then. So I hope you guys get to tune in. Nonetheless, thank you for listening. I hope you guys have a great morning, afternoon, or night, whenever it is you guys are tuning in. Take care.